And here we go. Well, Izzy, my love, welcome officially to the Body Love Binge podcast.
Thank you so much.
How does it feel being a guest on the podcast?
Yeah, it feels really weird being this side of the podcast rather than listening to it, to be
Indeed.
honest.
Yeah. And so I asked you if you would come on and share your story because I've been working with you for, what is it, about 6 months now?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
just over 6 months.
Just over 6 months. And you've come so far in your recovery. So I want you to share so people can get inspired. And then
Yeah.
also the things you say, people might resonate with and even have more faith it's possible for them. So let's start with a little bit of a background story from where your eating sort of started in the entire first place up until what made you reach out to me specifically.
Yeah. Okay. So from the very, very beginning, I was super lucky growing up. I had a really lovely family, a really lovely upbringing, and I came from a very happy, loving family. And never once in any of my childhood, even like into my teenage years, did I have any issues with body image or my weight or dieting or anything like that. Which I think sometimes people think is like really common, like they must, or someone that develops an eating disorder must always have been obsessed with weight or calories or something like that, but that wasn't my experience at all.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, super happy, normal childhood. And then when I was 16, COVID hit and we went into lockdown. And I was in England, sort of GCSE year that year. So I was sort of supposed to be sitting these big exams in school. And all of that was cancelled and we were all sent home and put into lockdown. And I decided that over the lockdown, I'd use some of that time all that free time I got, to sort of get into running, get a little bit fitter. And actually, initially, that was pretty harmless and a sort of normal, healthy thing. But what happened for me, I think, is that I had always been pretty perfectionistic and pushed myself very, very hard, sort of high achieving. And so I couldn't just do a little bit of running. I had to take that a little bit too far and I had to do loads of running and more and more and more. And what I think happened for me is I just was doing so much from never having really run before, is that I didn't increase my intake with the amount of movement I was doing. And so I pushed myself into an energy deficit.
Yeah. On purpose? Can we just be like,
No, definitely not on purpose. No. Definitely not on purpose. But all I remember is things being quite normal and quite healthy, and I was just going on a couple of runs, and then really, really suddenly, that genetic sort of switch flipped, and from that point onwards, I was like a zombie. Like all I could think about was how to eat less and move more. And I know that's not everybody's experience, but I know Tabitha Farrar, who I know you've also had on the podcast before, I know that was her experience as well. She was trying to lose weight, I think, to ride a certain horse.
Yeah, to ride a racehorse, because you have to
racehorse.
Weight to train the racehorse. Yeah,
exactly. And so again, just like similar to her, my intentions weren't like built from a bad place, but once I had triggered that genetic predisposition to anorexia, there was like no return. I was so gone so quickly. So like I say, it all happened from that point very, very fast. I got very sick physically and mentally very quickly. And obviously I was at home, fortunately, so my parents noticed pretty soon, and tried to intervene, tried to get me help, which was at the time very limited because obviously the NHS was really struggling. But we did manage to find a dietitian and a therapist that said they had some eating disorder specialities. I might
Questionable,
beg to
maybe.
differ. But I saw them
Yeah.
both weekly on Zoom for quite a long time, to be honest. Different therapists over the years, but effectively for the next 4 years, 4 and a bit years, I repeated the same cycle of 24/7 monitoring by my parents. Had to be sat with for every meal and snack, had to be monitored every second of the day to make sure I wasn't doing movement, and like real forced recovery. And
Yeah.
then I would, because of that monitoring, I'd gain some weight, and everyone would say, okay, things are going a bit better. Maybe you could start taking a bit more ownership. And I would say, yeah, okay, I'll try. And then that would last for varying amounts of time before inevitably I lost all the weight again, relapsed, if you could even call it a relapse if you were never better.
Yeah.
And then the monitoring would have to come back in again. And like I say, there were different like lengths of time between that inevitable relapse, but the cycle was the same over and over and over. And every time I got worse again, I just hand responsibility back to my parents or to someone else and make it someone else's problem. And like I say, after 4 and a bit years, I think it finally started to sink in that actually, if I wanted to ever get better and I wanted to ever break this cycle, I was going to have to do something a little bit different because this was clearly not working for me.
Yes. Did you want to
Yeah.
recover initially when your parents were supporting you every moment of the day? Was there resistance there? Did you want to get better? I'm curious where you were at that point when you started recovery then.
At the very, very beginning, I was a bit resistant. Um, like I say, it all happened very fast, and so I didn't, and I was so unwell. Um, Honestly, I don't really remember very much. I don't think I really thought anything other than, are they going to make me eat in an hour's time? Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really don't think there was much going on in here. But pretty pretty quickly, I was saying to everyone, oh, yeah, I want to get better. Yeah, 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 I definitely want to get better. But for 4.5 years, not one of my actions would have reflected that. And we've spoken before a lot, like if there was a fly on the wall watching your behavior, or you had to write down every single thing that you've done, someone videoed your life, would they know you were trying to recover?
Mm,
And definitely not is the answer.
yeah.
Definitely not. So the words were there, but the actions, I could never get myself to sort of match my words.
And then what made you reach out to me? What point? So you've been going for 4.5 years in this cycle,
Yeah.
and something within you was like, something needs to change if something needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
What brought you to me and my approach?
So I started looking more into coaches like yourself and lots of others that I could find online. I'd already seen some of Tabitha's stuff on YouTube, and I bought her book, Rehabilitate, Rewire, Recover. And that for me was a game changer. It really
Yes,
was.
great.
Because of the way she described her experience being much more biological, which
Hmm.
was what I really resonated with.
Yeah,
I felt confident in the approach that she took to get herself better, if that makes sense. I
yeah.
didn't feel as confident seeing therapists
Mm.
or relying on therapists that were telling me, oh, like we need to look deep into your childhood and analyze all your behavior as to why this happened. And don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, I think that is important because I think that did play a part. And many, many years and many sessions of CBT and other forms of therapy, okay, they weren't able to get me better, but I think they are important and they do have a role,
Yeah.
definitely.
Especially if
Um,
it was someone who had a different experience to you who
exactly,
did
exactly.
struggle
And
with stuff.
even for me, they were helpful in
Mm.
getting me to understand myself and getting me to a place where I could say that I did want to recover for a better life.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were helpful, but then when I read her book, I was like, this is the practical
Yeah.
side that I've been needing. And so then I started to look more into different people, because all of the coaches have sort of similar fundamental like beliefs about recovery and approaches to recovery, but everyone's slightly different,
Yeah.
and has slightly different things to bring to the table. And so I was watching and absorbing so much recovery content. But the fear after nearly 5 years to actually make the change was still so immense that I felt I needed a coach that I could work with for a consistent period of time, to sort of keep me going. I actually had a session with Tabitha herself.
I was going to ask you about
Yeah,
why didn't you, that would be the most next
yeah,
sensible step to do after the
yeah.
book.
No, I did have a session with her that was incredibly helpful. And as she honestly, she makes me laugh because she is as upfront and direct as she comes across on YouTube. Like it's brilliant, and it was exactly what I needed, a kick
Yeah.
up the bum. But I also needed some more ongoing
Mm.
support. I knew everything she told me was completely right, um, but I felt like then when we had our discovery call, it was like not only were you telling me all the things I needed to hear with the tough love, you were also then saying, but I'll sort of carry you through that, come through that with you.
Yes.
Whereas with Tabitha, we just had like a one-off call.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, I reached out to you. We did our little discovery introduction call, and I ended that call, and I felt hope for myself for the first time, um, in since I got unwell. And so I was like, "Yep, this is my lady."
And we started then
We
straight away,
did.
didn't we?
We did. Yeah. And I definitely don't want it to sound like, yeah, so I struggled for 5 years, and then I decided I was going to get better. I phoned a coach, and then I was done. I was healed.
Oh no, that's why
Because
we're here, because we're
no,
gonna
yeah,
talk about it all. So, what do you
exactly.
want to? In fact, I'll leave it more open for you, Izzy. Let me just change
Mhm,
my position. What do you kind of want to share now? So, you found me, you shared
mhm.
a bit about your background. I think it's worth speaking to the meal plan thing.
Yeah,
So, I'm just going to kind of let you free reign. And if I want to interrupt you or ask a question, I'll just like
go,
wave my hand.
go
Is
for
that
it.
cool with you? Because
Yeah, of
obviously,
course.
if you feel like you want me to ask you, or you're done speaking, obviously I will then come in
Of
and
course.
continue asking you. But I
Yeah.
think intuitively that feels right because you're sharing so beautifully. So continue.
Specifically about the meal plans.
Not well, just tie that into what you're going to
Yeah,
share. I
yeah,
think you will naturally get tied in anyway.
of course.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll start there because I think it's really interesting and b pretty important, and has
yeah,
been for me. Um, like I say, when I first started getting help, I wasn't fully on board or able to engage with it.
yeah,
Um, but it was that help that saved my life in the first place, because we were on a very steep downwards trajectory.
I think
Um,
that's worth saying, isn't it?
yeah,
Because yeah, it's all okay taking responsibility to recover, which we'll go into, I'm sure. But if
yeah,
someone is like you were, who needed monitoring 24/7, who almost needed to be forced to eat, it
yeah,
saved your life, that enabled you to then continue.
exactly, exactly. And it's I think it's the same, um, like with meal plans. They are not obviously the end goal. No one's like dream life involves following a meal plan that's super prescriptive and tells you what to eat when, etc.
Yeah,
But they do have a time and a place, and I have been in that time and place, and it feels like the worst thing in the whole world, but it, like I say, it is what saved my life. And I think the whole idea of intuitively eating, or I know you and now me would call it intuition eating rather than intuitive eating because of the kind of connotations that that can sometimes come with. But letting your body guide you to eat freely is the end goal, no question, for me anyways. And without that, I wouldn't feel like I had reached a full recovery if I couldn't do that. That's just my definition of how I would know when I am fully recovered. But I also think, even if you're not in the very, very early stages, I found myself sort of in the middle, often very trapped, saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do intuitive eating. I'm just going to let my body guide me in, and I'm just going to eat whatever I want. And then it just so happened that every day what my body wanted was lettuce and dry tuna.
Just
And
so the podcast
yeah,
you quoted that,
mm-hmm.
by the way.
Yes, yeah, and that was a little bit questionable. And I don't want to sort of like poo-poo myself, because I know I was trying my best. I've always tried my best in recovery, even when I've been doing so goddamn awfully. I was trying my best. But you have to be so brutal with yourself, or your coach has to be so brutal with you. And it's the same analogy we used at the beginning. If there was a fly on the wall watching me eat dry tuna and plain iceberg lettuce at every meal, they wouldn't know that I was trying to gain weight, would
No,
they?
no.
No.
I remember that was quite a powerful thing for you, wasn't it? Because
Yeah.
your goals was weight gain, obviously, because of where
Yeah.
you're at. And then I asked you that question. If I didn't know you and I was watching you and I couldn't speak to you by
Yeah.
your actions, would I know you were trying to gain weight? And you was
No.
like, no.
No. Yeah. And obviously there's so much, like I said, there's so much fear. It's so hard to make yourself, especially after a long period of time, like, how are you supposed to even know what you want when all you've eaten is about 3 foods that are all quite boring and disgusting? You genuinely think that's what you're craving, because everything else has been a hard no for so long that that's in your head, like that's not really even an option.
Yes.
And so I think also using a meal plan to introduce new things sometimes is important. And I was so desperate to reach that place of intuitive eating too soon, I think, for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it postponed making real progress in recovery for me, because I was trying to do step 7 before I'd mastered steps 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes knowing that that's the goal, and knowing that the way you're going to get there quicker is to actually just use a bit more support in the short term, knowing that that's a short term use of that meal plan or whatever it is, more support,
Yes.
to allow you to reach a place where you can do something more free.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what shifted? Because I can remember, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you can. If not, I'll invite you to remember.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest realization you had, like quite, I think it was from the first session actually, with my
Mm-hmm.
take on where you were at and what needs to be different. Can you remember like what it was specifically for you?
I think for me, when we first spoke, there was such an issue with responsibility for my own recovery. When I
Yes.
first got sick, I was 16 and very much a child, living at home, etc. But by this point, I was 19 or 20, living away from home, and 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 like I say, I'd been stuck in this cycle where every time I'd been given responsibility, I got worse and handed it straight back.
Why
And
do you think that? Why do you think that was? If someone recognizes themselves in you now and they feel that they
Mhm.
don't know why they were doing that, why were you doing that, do you think? Can you remember why?
um, why was I doing that? I think it's because all the progress I had built to get to the point where people were comfortable to give me the responsibility wasn't really my own. Like, I had built something on the foundations that weren't my, I mean, I was trying, yes, but they weren't my efforts. Like, all I was doing on the way up to that point was resisting. And
Yeah.
I never learned any skills, any mindset changes, anything that was going to help me like reclaim that responsibility when I got there. I was just sort of hoping someone else would get me better and then I'd take control. But
Yeah.
obviously with hindsight, that's never going to work. Like, it has to come from you from the bottom.
Yes.
And I was just very stuck in a sort of childish mindset where, like, I could just put it all on my parents. That was kind of their job. And in a way, when I was very sick, I would see it as like, as if I could get away with eating less and moving more, that was someone else's mistake. That was someone else's problem. And I never really clocked on to the fact that it was only myself that I was damaging and it was only my life that I was wasting.
Yeah.
I was just so disconnected from owning any of recovery. It felt like it wasn't my job.
What changed when we started working together? Was it something I said? Was it multiple things that I said that you can't remember to share now?
There was so much. I think there's probably a couple of like major things for me. Firstly, you would just always repeat that I had a choice. Everything was a choice. And that for me, after so long of forced recovery, again, I'm not shitting on it because it was necessary at the time. I had to be forced, otherwise I would have been dead. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. Yeah. But after so long of being like, you can't do this, you keep getting this wrong, you know, we're telling you this is what you have to eat and you have to eat it now. We don't care if you're hungry, we don't care if you're physically full, we don't care if you prefer chocolate because we're having yogurt and this is on the meal plan, very prescriptive. And suddenly you came and were just like, you could just have dinner at 8, not 7, if you're not hungry yet, if you're genuinely not hungry yet because you're an adult. And for me, that was revolutionary.
Yeah.
I had never even when I was trying to take more responsibility, it was like counting calories for the meal plan to make sure I was eating enough, blah, blah, blah. Still always very, very prescriptive. And that was the first inkling for me of freedom.
Yes.
And it didn't start with freedom with the actual food, like the types of food I was eating.
Yes.
It came from just the mindset of like, you could choose to do anything. You could choose to have no dinner, but you're not. So part of you does want to recover. You could choose to have 6 dinners, and that would be really great for your recovery. But you don't have the confidence to do that quite yet. So let's find somewhere, you know, in the middle where we're stretching and like growing and making changes, but not to the point where it's just too overwhelming and you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So definitely you telling me and reminding me always that there's a choice and I'm either choosing recovery or I'm not.
Yes. Let me just add something for the listeners in at that point. That's very powerful because I remember saying to you, and I say this to others as well, and to myself, when we say things like, I should, I have to, I need to, I remember saying to you, no, you don't have to eat. I mean, I want you to eat because I want you to live in freedom, but you don't have to. You can choose not to recover. And you were like,
oh yeah.
But I want to recover. So it's giving you that space.
Yeah.
For you to be like, oh, fuck, I actually do have a choice. I get to take responsibility over my life and my recovery. So therefore, you were then given space, I think, for you to be like, what do I want? Yeah. Not what am I being forced to do and I have to eat at this time because a meal plan says so and this much, but what do I actually want?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was like, it's almost like someone just pulls the rug out from under your feet because, like I say, I've been resisting. Like anything that was put in front of me was like a threat. And I was just like, fighting against everything recovery. And then your approach was just like, if you're not going to do it, you're not going to do it. Like
nothing to resist against.
Yeah. Like, do you not want to get better? That's fine. That's fine. And then suddenly there's nothing to resist. And I was like, oh, no, I do want to get better. I do, I promise.
Tell me how.
Exactly,
okay, right, let's get to work
exactly. So I think for me, that was probably the biggest thing, like stopping it being a fight and
Yeah.
making it be more of a like surrender to recovery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, huge. Let's
Mm.
talk about the fear, because even though you had the realization through my coaching that, wait, what do I want and I get to choose and it's all up to me from a place of power, not resistance,
Yeah.
that doesn't make the fear go away. I mean, it makes
Mm.
the fear more approachable, I guess, because you have autonomy over what you say you want.
Yeah.
But how did you go through the fear? I know it's probably hard to explain, isn't it? But how did you
Yeah.
do that?
Um, I think there were two things. I think having a coach like yourself who has been through it and is expert through experience um, was huge for me, because we could sit on our calls and laugh about sort of shared experiences being really unwell that we
Yeah.
had. Like, our stories are very different, but there are always sort of those shared experiences.
Yeah.
And you could say to me every single week, yeah, I went through that, yeah, I remember that. And yeah, I could see you living your life in complete freedom. And so I know that there is a path from where I am to where you are,
Yes.
and I know that you have walked that path. And so the trust that I had in you and what you were saying sort of allowed me to face that fear much more than I ever had been able to when I was seeing experts through qualification, like the
Yes.
therapists, etc. Because although I know they're super smart, super well qualified, like I say, it's just not the same as having someone be like, I did that myself and I got through it and I survived it. So definitely seeing your journey and talking to you about your journey was a massive sort of starting point. But the other thing is just starting. And that is so annoying because,
I know.
like, that's the advice you don't want to hear ever. Um, but just one thing at a time,
Yeah.
because I often, still to this day, if I'm struggling with something or I have, nasty, ill thoughts, if I start, that's the hardest bit.
Yeah.
And as soon as you prove to yourself that you can do one thing that you thought you were too scared to do, you like sow a seed,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, well, I thought I definitely couldn't do that, and I did it. So what else am I telling myself that isn't quite true? And
Yeah.
then things start to come in pretty quickly, especially um, if you're sort of new to recovery. Um, Honestly, it would my advice for facing the fear would just be do one thing,
Yeah.
because the likelihood is it will make everything else so much easier pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Would you say that the fear of something is worse than
Yes.
actually doing it?
Yes, always.
Yeah.
Always, especially with regards to eating, because in my head and many of your listeners' heads, it literally feels like the be all and end all. Um,
It
every
does.
single little mouthful or calorie or whatever it is for that individual feels like a massive deal. But for a normal eater, like 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 I don't want to put calories or numbers on it, but like what we would consider big amounts of food, that's just like give or take, it's not going to make any difference. For a normal eater, it is not a big
Yeah.
deal. None of it is a big deal. Um, and I think getting real about that is is the same as like the fear of the fear, because
Yeah.
it feels so big to us, but in reality, it's not that scary.
And you showed yourself the reality of the it
Yeah.
not being so scary by doing it in the fear. So there's a great book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And we're underneath the fear of eating. We're afraid of, I mean, multiple things. The list goes on, but underneath it, all at the root of everything, is a fear of not being able to handle it, whatever
Yes.
it is. So when you've started facing your fears from a new place of responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
what did you do with the guilt and the shame and the panic and all the stuff that came after you faced the fear? Because beyond fear lies freedom, but
Yeah.
not immediately.
Oh
You have to
no.
keep repeating it.
Yeah. Yeah. What did I do with it? Cried a lot to my
Mm,
mum. And again, unhelpful, I mean, not unhelpful, but probably unwanted advice that you've heard a million trillion times is you have to just sit with it because, and this is not like something that I mastered straight away by any means. I would sort of like force myself to challenge myself with the food, but then I'd go on a run. And
yeah,
then that was just all undone. I may as well have just starved myself the whole day because it's pointless. And it gets so like a web of, oh well, I'll eat this and then I'll try and compensate with this, but if I have this at this time then I'll do this, and you're trying to work it out, but there's nothing to work out. It's going to be
exactly.
uncomfortable for a period of time, and the sooner you can get through that period of uncomfortableness, the sooner it will be over. um
So you
yeah.
embrace the discomfort. You
Yeah.
would you say, well, perhaps not embraced it, but you stopped resisting the discomfort. And obviously you had my support with like,
Hmm.
yeah, like it's going to be uncomfortable. Newsflash, like truth bomb, you
Yeah.
will not get to the other side of recovery without being uncomfortable, without wanting to crawl out your skin, and without wanting to just run out of who you are and sleep
Hmm.
for a week till it all passes. I've been there. I know what that
Yeah.
feels. But for having me and, your mum especially was a big support for
Yeah.
you to just hold you in the feelings,
Yeah.
to express them, and then you're okay at the end of it. You might not feel great, but you've survived what before you did this thing, what your brain and nervous system were telling you was going to be the death of you. You
Yeah.
survived. And then, like you
No,
say, you do one thing
absolutely.
and then another thing.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. And sort of tying into that is the same kind of mindset, but really remembering and keeping at the forefront of my brain that am in active recovery from anorexia. It was
Yeah.
very, very easy for me to like look at people around me and be like, oh, I'm kind of eating the
Mhm.
same as them now. So I think that's fine. But that for me was a massive pitfall over and over and over. Like I'd do better and then I'd be like, oh, okay, that's fine, that's good enough. But then I'd so slowly slip backwards again and again and again.
Yeah.
Um, and for a period of time, really being like, no, like this, I am going into recovery. I'm in recovery. I'm gaining weight. I'm doing this actively. I'm choosing to do this. And with recovery from anorexia comes bloating, comes discomfort, comes mental hunger, comes all the emotion. And
Yeah.
I know that's coming. And I can't plan for it. I don't quite know what's going to hit when, but I can be prepared. And like, I know that the likelihood is I'm going to feel really sick or really uncomfortable or really whatever it is, guilty after this meal. But I'm feeling that because I'm going through this process to get to a place where I want to be, and just sort of claiming not forever or for as short a time as possible, I guess, but really claiming the identity of someone in recovery and just like reminding myself that that was my only job at the time.
Yes. I
Everything
was
else
going
was
to ask you
secondary.
about identity actually, because I mean, you identified as what? Will you tell me when you came to me and you were kind of in a resistant, forced recovery,
Mm-hmm.
what was your identity? And then when you shifted to actually, I'm choosing and I want to recover, therefore my actions are going to show that,
Yeah.
to what you've just said, actually, I'm going to choose to identify as someone who is in active recovery, so therefore I need to act like it,
Yeah.
not like someone who's recovered who just eats intuitionally.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was your identity shift and how did you navigate that? Because that's one of the biggest fears of people in recovery, to be like, well, who would I be without the eating disorder then?
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting thing to think about for me personally. Like I say, I got unwell when I was like 16, so still very young, and then spent a long time in a very weird place where I was still sort of friends with my same friends that knew me before I was unwell, but I was so poorly for so many years that obviously anorexia and all eating disorders drain your social life
Yeah.
because every single social plan involves food and drink, which is just the most annoying thing.
But no,
Um,
it's a great thing because you
it's a
get to
great thing.
enjoy
At the
it.
time, it was annoying.
Yes.
Um, but I really like, I had no interest in going out. I didn't want to see my friends, really. I was grumpy all the time. And like I say, all I was thinking about was movement and food. And so I don't really know what my identity was. I didn't have the experience because of how rapidly I got unwell. I
Yeah.
didn't have the fairly common experience of like being known for being a gym bunny or like being a fitness girl. That was never me. And then it was literally, we went into lockdown, we went back to school, and everyone was like, oh my God, what's happened to her? Um, and and I guess I did then for a period of time take on an identity that was someone who was unwell and struggling with their eating. Um, and like I say, I didn't do very much socially. That was sort of helped by the fact we were in and out of lockdown for a while. Um, and then I took a year out between school and going to university. And so lots of my friends went away, either traveling or straight to university during that time. And I spent a lot of time at home trying to recover in that cycle that we spoke about earlier. And so I don't really know what my identity was when we first like met or started our coaching with regards to well, I definitely still had my personality from before my illness. But like I say, everything was just dulled down
Yeah.
and like covered by a
And also
blanket of illness.
you started it in adolescence. So
Yeah,
you weren't an adult knowing who you were, knowing what you chose to identify with, and then the eating disorder came. It came, like for me, it came when I was like 11, 12, as you were growing into the woman you may become. And so
yeah,
that, like you beautifully describing it, just dampened and numbed everything. So you probably didn't really know who you were, really.
exactly. I don't think I did at all. And I think I'm
Yeah.
still discovering that. I didn't have those sort of formative years where most people decide, oh, actually, that's for me, that's not for me. I like this, I like that.
Yes.
Again, like I say, all I was thinking about was my next meal. I didn't
Yeah.
give any thought to who I was or anything like that until I started sort of really leaning into recovery and thinking like, okay, there actually could be a life after this where my life isn't just ruled by what I eat and how I move.
Yeah.
And I think that was another thing that really attracted me to doing coaching with you in particular, because the way you sold me recovery was like a whole lifestyle shift. It wasn't just like, oh, we'll just fix this little eating issue you've got on the side and then you can go back to normal life. It was
Yeah.
like, you can live every single day for the rest of your life in complete freedom. You don't have to do anything. And that was revolutionary. Even for me, pre illness, I don't think I would have ever thought like that had I not had the experience I had or done coaching with you.
Most people don't, sadly, because bringing this into like a worldwide thing, how I see
Mm,
it, a lot of people go to jobs they don't particularly like to pay the mortgage they have to pay, and all these things. I'm not saying that everyone should just like complete drop all responsibilities and all of that, but if you don't like your job,
yeah,
you don't have to stay. So worldwide here, people do what they don't like to do because they feel like you have to do things you don't want to do sometimes.
yeah,
Not if you create a life that you are in love with. So I remember our last coaching session, I
yeah.
think you brought the question and the conversation up around what's next? Like,
Mm.
what is next for me? How do I get to tune into what I want for life? So do you want to share now how your relationship with food is now. I know
Yeah.
you wouldn't class as yourself as recovered full stop,
No.
but just share like in comparison to how you were,
Yeah.
how you are now, and then share with us what's next for you.
Ooh, okay. So at the moment, I I would definitely still say I'm very much in recovery, in active recovery. I still have some more weight I want to gain, and I still have, habits that I've formed over the however many years it's been, that I'm actively working on breaking. Um, but I feel like I I don't doubt anymore that I will get better and I will reach a place of full recovery. I know exactly what I need to do, and I've proven to myself enough times now that the method that we have followed works. If
Yes.
I really do it honestly with myself, honestly with the people around me, I know I will get there. And that's insane to say that from where I've been, that feels amazing. And so for me now, I feel it's just time. It's
Yes.
keeping up the momentum that I have sort of built up with our coaching, keeping that going, and then going and going and going beyond recovery. Um, because I think I struggle to say that it's been a blessing, but actually it definitely has been a blessing. The rest of my life would never have looked the way I think it looks now had I not been unwell and had I not learnt so much about myself, about life, about freedom, about everything, that we've sort of gone through. And I went through even prior to our coaching with therapy. I wouldn't have had that experience had I not been unwell. Um, and the future, what does the future look like for me? I want to finish my degree. Um, and then beyond that, I'm not 100% sure, but for the first time ever, that doesn't panic me as much as it used to. I
Yes.
think I think I have learned through my experience that if you are happy and if you are healthy, you're rich in life. And and having been down in the depths of everything, um, honestly, all of sort of quote unquote normal life feels like a blessing. And I used to have all this pressure from myself, like, oh, I'm an academic person, so I must do well in my exams and I must have a job that is quote unquote, high achieving and successful, and I must be successful in my life and earn money because da 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 da. And I really, really felt that pressure even when I was really young.
Yeah.
But now, if I am well, if I can make a full recovery, and I'm
When?
and I'm
Excuse me, please.
when sorry when I make a full recovery, and I'm comfortable enough to get by in life, that's all I need, really, really. And so I don't quite know, but that can be exciting, not scary.
Health is wealth, and it's a bit
Yeah,
cringy, but it's true.
it is.
It's so true. And so, following the breadcrumbs, I think I spoke to you about this before, like
Mhm.
following the next step for you, we don't have to know. In fact, I invite people not to know
Yeah,
what your 5 year plan is because you could change your mind in a minute. You
yeah,
could change your mind next year depending on where you allow your life to guide you. So, in terms of just some tangible differences, so people who resonate with where you were
yeah.
on a meal plan and things like that, compared to where you are now, still in recovery. My
Hmm.
question to you was what's stopping you from being recovered, but you answered that already through just being consistent and time with
Yeah,
what you know, and then you will reach there. What was my question for you? Wait, oh yeah, in comparison to how you were eating when you started coaching,
yeah.
how do you eat now in comparison to then?
Ooh, wow. um Very differently. I think I want to caveat this by saying, obviously, not everyone struggling is underweight or has ever been underweight. It's just in my experience,
Yeah.
I spent a long time very underweight. And so I have been through and continue to sometimes go through periods of pretty extreme eating, because my body has been so malnourished for so long. And so, like, obviously, if you looked at what I ate in a day back in the day, and you look at some of the days I've had more recently, there's a very obvious difference in volume and caloric value, not just volume of vegetables.
Do you mean in comparison to the eating disorder or the meal plan, or both?
Definitely to the eating disorder, and on more hungry days, definitely even to the meal plan. Um,
Good. So fly on the wall. Hey, she looks like
yeah,
she's actually
she looks like
wanting
she's
to gain
doing it.
weight.
Yes,
Good.
exactly. Um, but also variety was a
Mm.
massive sort of sticking point for me, and sometimes still is. I sometimes am prone to getting really like fixated onto one thing, which is fine as long as I know I can continue the other things. Like
Yeah.
I could do that. So it's again just like keeping checking in with myself. Like if all I'm wanting for every single snack is Cocoa Pops, that's so fine. As long as if there were no Cocoa Pops, I could have something else, and that doesn't cause me to panic. So just staying vigilant about that. But yeah, I mean, it looks very very different and more relaxed.
Feel. Yeah,
Yes,
so
it
you
just feels
looks like you know my
more
question. How
relaxed.
does it feel in comparison to the to following the meal plan?
Yeah, it it just feels right, and that's sort of doesn't. I mean, it does make sense. I guess it feels like I am learning and developing this relationship with my body where it's starting to trust me again, and it's starting to say like, okay, when we said more Cocoa Pops, she actually did that. So maybe if we ask for something else, she'll give us that. And it's like a conversation now. And like I said, that it feels trusting, and I feel like it feels like a relationship, like with another person, that I'm sort of growing and fostering, rather than before I just felt so disconnected. I didn't have hunger, fullness, any of it. I would have just told you I felt full the whole time, um, which I probably did because the meal plan was quite large and I wasn't used to eating that amount of food. None of that was a lie as such, but there was just no like
Connection to
no
self?
connection at all, and it was just so regimented. Again, like I did need that at periods of my recovery and of my journey, but I'm so grateful for like to now be in a position where I can start developing that relationship because it feels right. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm having to follow this meal plan because I'm trying to get better from anorexia, blah 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 blah. No, it feels like this is a relationship I'm growing and I will have forever. It's not like a big fear for me on the meal plan was, what about when I gain all the weight? And so then I have to go back to restriction. No way am I letting myself get to that point where I have to go back to restriction. No way. And so that was such a roadblock for me. Whereas this approach, like this is something you're growing, and you will inevitably go through periods of where it feels very extreme and very unhealthy because all you just want sugar every single second of the day. But actually I can very very easily see how this approach I will follow forever, a healthy way. If my weight ever goes up or it ever goes down, I'll have this relationship that I would have worked so hard on, that I know I can trust, and I never have to think about it again once I've developed that connection.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's so beautiful. And it's going to carry you through life because it's just being connected back with self.
Yeah,
And that relates to food. It relates to relationships, what relationship feels right for you, what feels wrong. It relates to what career you want to do. It's everything. It's not just food.
yeah, Yeah.
So, last two questions. Question one, what's the biggest thing you've learnt in recovery?
Oh my gosh. What is the biggest thing? I'd probably have to biggest thing.
Or perhaps the thing that maybe surprised, not this question exactly, but maybe something that surprised you that you learned?
Yeah, I think it's sort of boring because we've already discussed it a little bit, but um I think the mentality of freedom in regards to everything in life, um, that that sort of realization I had when we first spoke was very much like with regards to the food and my eating, but through our coaching calls we've spoken about it in many different areas of life.
Yeah.
And I think for me that shift to like, you don't actually have to do anything, and you don't have to follow that path. And just because it's, I don't know, what most people would do, or it's because what you think is, people would approve of, or anything, like, you don't have to do anything. And
Yeah.
that is something um, that I know I would have never sort of learned without becoming unwell and without having to go through recovery.
Yeah. You're free to be free,
Yeah.
or you're free to be bound.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
We're always free. And like I say, this is going to be so crucial for you and anyone who's listening who really grasps this. You don't have to do anything. I mean, some people will come out with, okay, yeah, I have to go to work to pay the mortgage. Short term, yes. But long term, if you're not happy with your relationship with food, your relationship with your body, relationship with your husband, the career you have, fucking change it then. You have the power to change it.
Yeah.
Anything, and a bit about me just to give people a bit of it more inspiration. Yeah, I'm very blessed that I haven't grown up in like poverty or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first moved to the Netherlands, I had to get a job cleaning student toilets and student showers because I couldn't speak the language, basically because I couldn't speak the language. So I was literally cleaning shit off walls in toilets and getting hair from showers, listening fully in an eating disorder,
Yeah.
listening to podcasts and things. And then I decided I wanted to get better myself. And then I decided I wanted to help other people. And so I created my own business, which now has a wait list. I now get to manage my time in however way I want to, like living the dream because I created it.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone else can also create what they want. It takes effort, yes. It takes facing fears, yes, but you can do it with anything, recovery, career, anything.
Yeah.
So, last question, Izzy.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's listening to this and they're like, oh my God, I'm where Izzy was,
Yeah.
what would you say to them? What words of wisdom or inspiration would you say to them to encourage them to take the step to be where you are and then ultimately where I am in their own version of that?
I would say two things. I would say, firstly, no one regrets really recovering. Like, you just don't hear of that. You hear of people reaching a sort of getting a little bit better and then regretting it and relapsing, but people that
Yeah,
make a full, genuine recovery, using approaches like yours and like sort of many other coaches online, um, they don't regret that. You just won't find people that have done it properly and regret it, and that has to stand for something.
yeah,
Um, and it also means that it is possible. And if it's possible for all these people out like yourself, it's possible for anyone. Um, it doesn't mean it will be easy, but it is definitely possible. And if you do it, you definitely won't regret it. And the second thing, which was probably my biggest like why for sort of starting, even before our coaching, like for even reaching out to a coach, was a quote. I don't even know if it's a proper quote. Maybe I just made it up. Um, is that I would say to myself over and over again, all stories end the same, which sounds really morbid, but at the end of the day, everyone's story ends the same. Everyone dies. And
Yeah.
and when that day comes for me, whenever it may be, you're gonna have to, or I'm gonna have to look back on my life and is there ever going to be a scenario where I think, yeah, thank God I stayed really skinny. Thank God, because that was 100% worth it. Or am I going to say, oh Christ, oh Christ, I've reached the end of my life and I don't have any friends. I don't have a family because I lost my fertility to my eating disorder. Like, I don't, I don't have any memories really because I couldn't go on holiday because, you know, I didn't want to sit on the plane for 3 hours because that was too long without movement. That like, and just that image alone was enough for me to be like, yeah, no. And I know that you, speaking to anyone that is in the same position, will hear that and be like, yeah, okay, I really want to recover. And then you'll get to your next meal and have a large bowl of whatever it may be and be like, oh, actually, maybe I don't care. But just keeping that in the forefront of your mind, set it as your lock screen, make a poster, get it on post-it notes, do whatever. But like, you have to remember that if you don't stop the cycle, it will carry on. It will carry on forever. And then that's your whole life. And that's so scary. But you can stop it. You can stop the cycle.
Like literally, I have goosebumps. What an incredibly powerful way to end and for you to share, Izzy. So thank you, because
No problem.
I have nothing to say. Truth bomb, mic drop. Yep. I have nothing else to say apart
Oh,
from
brilliant.
thank you for sharing your
My
story, Izzy.
pleasure.
And thank you for trusting me to be your coach and to guide you.
No,
It's
thank
been
you.
an absolute honour to see you flourish and to see who you are now in comparison to the woman I met those months ago.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
You're welcome, my love. Enjoy your rest of the days in Portugal and
Thank
much love.
you.
Bye, lovely.
Bye bye.